The Beyond the Fame podcast is fed by Lido Pizza. Lido Pizza never cuts corners. For menu and locations, visit LidoPizza.com. And of course, this podcast would not be possible without our longtime title sponsor, the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. Upcoming featured entertainment includes Bret Michaels' Birthday Bash on April 11th and Earthquake on April 12th. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. AwesomeCon returns to the Washington Convention Center in Washington, D.C. on April 4th through 6th, including a special cast reunion of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I spoke with Ninja Turtles co-creator Kevin Eastman about how his comic book evolved into an animated TV series, action figures, video games, and beloved live-action movie blockbusters. Hey, Kevin Eastman, thanks so much for joining the show today.
So nice to be here. Thrilled, and really thrilled. This is we're just kicking off our 2025 tour, and you guys are top of the list. So we're looking forward to coming to the East Coast as always, and of course, having an awesome time at AwesomeCon.
Yes, well, if you think you're thrilled, I am absolutely thrilled because you are the co-creator of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And we're not just talking the movies or the video games or the TV series. We're talking all the way back to the comic book. So you started this whole thing with Peter Laird. That's awesome. And we'll get to that in a second. But let's start with the convention because you're coming to AwesomeCon at the Washington Convention Center April 4th through 6th. It's the 35th anniversary of the original 1990 live action movie. And I want to tell everybody the convention guests include not only you, but Brian Tachi, Leonardo, Corey Feldman, Donatello, Josh Paez, Raphael.
Yep.
And Robbie Riss, Michelangelo, and Judith Hoeg, April O'Neil. So they're all going to be individually there throughout the weekend, and you'll be there with the panel on, what is it, Sunday?
I think they're doing that. Yeah, they do the panels on Sunday because I think, once the show kicks off on Saturday, everybody's like, wants to get that autograph, get all the stuff, ready so they can get into full con mode. Yeah. So the panels are always, to me, Sunday is a great day to do because people are a bit more relaxed and we can sort of all have fun. We're all gotten into the rhythm of the whole event. So, yeah. Very much looking forward to it. And of course, as you mentioned, the 35th anniversary of the first Turtle movie. Yeah. So excited this cast is all going to be together and celebrating it there with us and all of you guys.
How often do you get to reunite with this cast? I mean, I assume, well, we're not going to have Casey Jones, right? No Elias. He's busy, infecting Denzel with his spirit in Fallen. Anyway, but this is a really cool, I mean, I'm sure the conventions, maybe you'll get one or two Turtles, but to have all four and April and yourself, this is going to be awesome.
Oh, it's exceptional because we, the last year we celebrated the 40th anniversary of the comic book. Peter and I self-published, and the first issue came out in May of 1984. So 2024 was we did a lot of really fun shows, and there were a number of them that we actually had multiple experiences where. At one particular show, we had all four of the original Turtles cartoon voice casts were there. Wow. Barry, Cam, and Townsend Coleman, and just the greatest bunch of guys as well. But there were a number of other shows that we did get to hang out with some of the original talent from the first movie, including Ernie Reyes Jr., which I don't think he's making it to this show, but we've seen him in other shows before, and he wore the Donatello stunt costume in the first movie, and of course came out as Kino in the second Turtle movie.
Yeah, the pizza delivery guy. We're gonna get into all this as we move through, because if you can't tell, I'm a huge fan. But let's now go a little chronologically. As you said, you invented it in '84, and that was actually the year I was born. So I guess I was born to love being a turtle. But you were born in Maine in what, '62, I guess, right? So how do you meet Peter Laird, your co-creator, in, I guess it was Massachusetts, but you moved in together, I guess it was like in New Hampshire to launch this whole thing in '84, right? You've told the story many times probably, but just remind us, how did you two come together to form this thing?
Yeah, no, it's never, I love it. No, actually I would work, I grew up in Maine, born in Maine, 1962, I'll be 63 this year. But in Maine, a lot of times you can have a job from Memorial Day to Labor Day, cooking lobsters or doing touristy kind of things. And every fall I would move someplace unique and someplace different to just reach out and explore life. I ended up moving to Amherst, Massachusetts, and that was there. I was applying for trying to sell some of my cartoons to the same magazine that Peter Laird worked for, and they introduced me to him, and we sort of had a immediate kinship over one of our main heroes, which is Jack Kirby, which inspired us both growing up. And we started collaborating right away. I moved back to Maine. He ended up moving from Massachusetts, about 30 minutes from where I lived in Maine. That fall of 1983, we formed a studio, Mirage Studios, and that's where the first turtle was drawn. Yeah, the short version is the rest is history, but there was a lot of creation and involvement and us coming up and actually working on the comic book together. But it was kinship from day one, and we just um, get to live that childhood dream of drawing comic books for a living.
Yeah,
So
so many kids grow up, doodling and creating characters, and yours actually became like a I don't even know how many billion empire. But I like, thanks for shouting out, what is it, Jack Kirby? I guess he created Captain America, right? A bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
But
Jack
that's
Kirby
cool.
was one of the original creators for many many things before he partnered up with Stan Lee and at Marvel Comics, and he either created or co-created most of the Marvel universe, without a doubt, including Captain America, Hulk, Thor, so many of things that he again created on his own, and many things with co-creator Stan Lee. But he was legendary. He's one of the brightest founders, and just such a bright light and such inspiration that inspired so many people. So yeah, he's a
Absolutely.
true legend.
And so that sort of this inspired like your animation style and storytelling and on a comic book level. How did
Absolutely.
you and Peter, how did you come up with the idea to name all four turtles after the painters? Because, in the story, it's Splinter's idea, but it's actually your two ideas. So how did you come up with the idea to name after, Michelangelo, Leonardo?
No, it's a great story because when I was in high school, growing up, junior high, high school, I was not only a geek because I like comic books, and at that time when being a geek was not necessarily a
It's cool now, but back then
it's
it
cool
wasn't.
now,
Yeah.
thanks to Big Bang Theory and things like that.
Right.
But I was a double geek because I was also a big fan of history, especially art history, and Leonardo da Vinci was one of my favorite.
Yeah.
Leonardo, Michelangelo, and so when Pete and I were coming up with who these characters were, what their origin story was, and how they evolved, we were trying to come up with the names, and it was like, well, traditional Asian names seems to make sense because of the culture and the history
Yeah.
that the martial arts history that they have in the story. Not silly enough. We're talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so maybe Doug, Bob, Steve, American names, still not funny enough. And I went and said, Peter, how about we go crazy and do like Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Raphael? And he laughed out loud, which was our barometer. So that was
Yeah.
where the names stuck. And Donatello was we liked a sculptor named Bernini. We liked Donatello as a sculptor, so it went back and forth a little bit. But I'm glad we chose Donatello. But yeah, it was just our passion for art and art history that really brought that to the
I'm
fore.
glad. Thanks for that story, and I'm glad you chose Donatello as well. It flows a little better off the tongue, as the iconic animated TV series taught us, like in '87. I've always wanted to sing that iconic theme with the creator of Ninja Turtles. If you're down,
First I have no singing voice.
I'll talk sing it. We know it's Leonardo leads, Donatello does machines. That's
Raphael
a
is
fact
rude
check.
but crude.
Give me a break. But Michelangelo is the party dude.
Do you know who wrote that song?
No, who tells?
Chuck Lorre.
Really?
Yes, he was Chuck Lorre, who is the creator of Two and a Half Men, Big Bang Theory,
Yeah,
Mike and Molly, so many other things.
yeah.
When he was starting out in Hollywood, and we met him and get to talk about it, which was such a fun meeting when we actually, my wife Courtney and I went to the Big Bang set and got to meet him and sit and we took turns sitting in Sheldon's spot, which was great. But Chuck Lorre, when he was just starting out, he was writing jingles,
Wow.
theme show jingles, commercials jingles, and things like that. And as he said, he was a hero to his daughter in grade school because when she was young, growing up, is like my dad wrote the theme song for the Turtles when it first came out. But yeah, Chuck Lorre wrote that,
Wow.
and what a legend, what a great guy. And we again had a great we had an opportunity to meet him, and just what a wonderful person. He's a real creative genius as well.
I didn't know he actually wrote. So he's the one that came up with like the lyric in the line "Heroes in a Half Show," or was that a tagline outside of the lyrics?
That's all him.
He
Here was
came
an
up with that and it
no.
stuck. Wow. That's so awesome. Well, yeah, that show, and then James Avery, I guess, was voicing Shredder, from Fresh Prince, rest in peace. Like, but that show, I mean, yes, I'm sure you had a hardcore comic book following, but that show was probably ran from like 87 to 96. That show was where a bunch of kids like myself, that's how we met all these guys in Krang and the Technodrome and the Mouser, you know what I mean? Bebop Rocksteady, like, that's how we learned to love all that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think, I mean, it was one of those strange transitions where, I think at the height of the comic book success was maybe we're selling 100,000 copies an issue, which is phenomenal. And
yeah,
on every possible level that Peter and I could have never imagined.
yeah,
Then suddenly we have this cartoon show comes out, and then suddenly there's millions of people exposed to it. And
yeah.
it's one of those, it just could have easily have failed as it worked, but young people like yourself and people listening, a lot of people are going to be standing in line at AwesomeCon to say hi to me, and some of the other turtle guests are going to be there. They fell in love with it, and
Yeah.
we're so lucky to have them. They gave me the greatest job ever. So.
Yeah, I mean, you taught an entire generation of us to grow up throwing pizza parties, and well, we couldn't just put it all in our mouth in one bite like in the cartoon. But even our slogans and phraseologies, we were all walking around saying "cowabunga" and "radical" and all. That was all thanks to you all in the show. Well, we have to before we get to the live action movies that we tease a couple other real quick things in the late '80s there. You guys license your characters to Playmates Toys, and between 88 and 1992, it goes like over 1.1 billion in sales. That's crazy. You couldn't have imagined that the action figures would have taken off to rival, G.I. Joe and the rest. Like, does that blow your mind that you created a toy line in addition to this comic book and TV show?
You might get, yeah, it was really such an incredible perfect storm of the right place, the right time, and having a partner like Playmates Toys and who really came in and they wanted to create something fun and exciting and different and sort of because they spent a lot of money. There was the first. They originally were they made dolls for preschoolers and those kind of things. So this is a big venture for them to get into the boys action figure market.
Right.
So they put all their heart and soul in it and came up with some really wonderful toys and ideas. And we were thrilled to have worked with them. And it was again much like when the first cartoon show, when the first comic book came out, it could have failed just as easily as it succeeded. It started selling. The cartoon show came out, it succeeded. And when the first toy shipped in June of 1988,
Yeah.
we were competing again. It was He-Man, and it was G.I. Joe, and it was those kind of things. But there was something wacky about the Turtles that the fans the young people just really found something interesting in. And yeah, they've been a great friend and a great partnership. And they're still doing, they did the most recent line of toys for Mutant Mayhem, the movie
Yeah.
that came out last year, which was really fun. So great,
Uh,
great, great company.
Oh yeah, and yeah, I mean, I still remember, once you got all the little characters, then then my brother and I had the little pizza shooter mobile and the and the ooze that would drip down into this. Like you sold literal sets, and backdrops, right? Not only
Yeah, it
just the
was.
vehicles. It was
Yeah,
incredible.
there's the sewer playset. You had the Technodrome. You had like the little action figures, because they really
Yeah.
played up on this concept of fresh from the sewer, which was really kind of a funny thing it was kind of like gross out humor that parents hated. Yeah,
It's
so
great.
when you had like the toilet taxi and the
Yeah, yeah,
things, it was all really, like ooze, they sold like little, buckets of slime that was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
every parent hated because it would stick to the couch.
My grandparents made us go do it on the back deck. So if it dripped, it would go down the wood slats in the deck. But then, of course, also, not only that, there was the video games by Konami, the Japanese company. I guess the first one for the original Nintendo NES was 89. It was more of like an overhead view. I remember there was a map until you got down in the sewer. And then the sequel I love was the side-scrolling arcade game. I still remember that cheat code, man. That what was it? BA, up, down, BA, left, right, BA, select, star, infinite lives. It's the only way I could beat it. That and Contra.
Right. No, it was great because I think it was when the first NES game came out. I was like, it was so hard. Even like people used to come up to us when the game first came out at a convention. They'd come to Pete and I and go,
Yeah.
"Why did you make this game so hard?" And it's like we didn't. And so we can't even beat it either. We can't get through the water level either.
That first
Um,
one is impossible.
Impossible. So we were as thrilled as you were, as you mentioned, when they came out with the side-scrolling
Yeah.
arcade game, which is you could not only play with three of your other buddies, so
Right.
there's four, four of you could play at the same time, but also it was more manageable and everybody wanted to be Donatello because he had the furthest reach with his
With
staff.
his
He could
bow,
sort of,
yeah.
but that was a fun game. No, that was a really, to be on the front lines of that emerging industry of video games. I played Space Invaders and asteroids and those kind of things.
Like
But
the
this
Atari style. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the Atari style. So when this came out, it was really when that thing really propelled all of us fans into that kind of stuff, into a whole other universe. So
Oh,
that's pretty
you were pioneering all these different mediums. We're talking comic books, animated TV show, action
cool.
figures, video games, and now all of a sudden now live action movies, which is what we're celebrating at AwesomeCon here. The very first one comes out in 1990. I believe I looked it up. It was the fourth, at least domestically in the States, the fourth highest grossing movie of that year, behind only Ghost, Pretty Woman, and Home Alone. I mean, that's massive. It outgrossed Hunt for Red October and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think it doesn't get the credit it deserves in hindsight? Not only for New Line Cinema, because I always called that the house that Freddy built because of Nightmare on Elm Street, and deservedly so. But Turtles really kept that going, and also catapulting the superhero genre. I mean, I guess Tim Burton's Batman came out right the year before in '89, but I mean, Ninja Turtles really showed that superheroes could work.
It was such an amazing thing because every studio in Hollywood turned it down, and thank goodness for Bob Shaye who's the head of the studio. Bob Shaye also greenlit and started the Lord of the Rings franchise, which we all
Yeah,
love.
you may have
But
heard of it.
like you said, it was the house that Freddie built,
Yeah,
and along comes this really interesting sort of risky concept. I think the budget was a little over 7 million at that time, which was quite a lot for a movie, in the late 80s. But he took the chance and he was able to spearhead and pull together such fantastic people like, certainly with Golden Harvest, who brought in a lot of the stunt actors and things like that that worked from Hong Kong, but also Steve Barron, who was the director, who's was famous for so many incredible music videos like Dire Straits' "Money for Nothing" and
yeah,
Aha and Michael Jackson's Billie Jean, things like that. And of
yeah.
course, the pièce de résistance was Steve Barron convinced Jim Henson to come in and build
Yes.
those costumes. Which, if the costumes didn't work, the whole movie would have fell flat. But I think it still holds up great. It's one of those favorite movies. When you see fans that remember fondly Goonies and
Yeah.
Turtles and things like that of that time, there's a special time and moment that all clicked and worked great, and I
Yeah.
love that. That will always be my favorite turtle movie, hands down across the board, forever and ever and ever and ever, infinity.
Same. I went and saw it at the theater, and I remember we were a few minutes late, and thankfully my dad let us. We were like, "No, please, can we play out in the parking lot until the next time showing?" We didn't want to miss the beginning of it, so
No
we did. We
way.
waited 2 hours until that. Wow.
How
Uh,
cool is your dad? That was really awesome.
but what I loved about the movie, it was gritty. Like, you know what I mean? It was like a gritty urban movie about sewers and Foot Clan and all this stuff. And it was unbelievable. And thanks for mentioning that was one of the maybe the final, one of the final that Jim Henson actually worked on. He died right around that time. But
Unfortunately, yes.
those costumes were revolutionary. And Jim Henson was a fellow Terp. He went to University of Maryland, so there's a local connection here to DC.
Love it.
Kevin Clash, who voiced and puppeteered Master Splinter in that movie, was from Baltimore, Dundalk High, another local connection. So come out to AwesomeCon and pay tribute to your local legacy here too, folks. Um,
Absolutely.
Before we run, I wanted to ask you about the sequel because I love Secret of the Ooze. It came out a year later. I guess they just fast tracked that, right? They were like, "Oh my gosh, we have a top four grosser of 1990. Let's do let's do another one." That was a top 10 grosser as well.
Yep.
What did you make of the second one? I mean, I know they replaced April with Paige Turco. David Warner comes in as the TGRI scientist. Loved him in The Omen.
It's
But
great.
they did some cast changes, right? You mentioned Keno, Ernie Reyes Jr. goes from Donatello Stuntman to actually an on-screen role as the pizza guy, and then Super Shredder was Kevin Nash of pro wrestling fame. So a lot of and Vanilla Ice doing ninja rap. So yeah, you said the first one's your favorite though, still the gritty original, but two is a pop culture powerhouse, undeniable.
Yeah, no, and luckily Pete and I still had we had full control over what could be done and could not be done on the Turtles. So when we started working on a second movie, there was a bunch of discussion where they wanted to make it more like a live action cartoon as opposed to something that we felt
Yeah,
was perfected in Turtles movie one, which was something for the older audience, which was say fans of the original black and white comic book,
yeah,
and all the antics and the crazy fun loving pizza jokes and stuff from the kids that were fans of the cartoon.
yeah.
So with the second movie, it drifted more towards the cartoon, and we understand how all that works. Yeah, was we were the things like the change of Aprils was an interesting thing that we still don't know exactly what happened there.
You can ask
But
Judith at the Awesome Con this weekend, folks.
yeah, but she was, she was to us, Judith was the first April, and she was great, and she
Yeah,
was wonderful. But No, so it was a fun mix of doing a more lighthearted version
Yeah.
of the Turtles, and a lot of people have told us hands down that that's one of their favorites.
Yeah.
My favorite is number one.
Same.
Some people like number two, but
Yeah.
I love them all. So I like
Yeah.
one, two, and three. So I thought
Yeah.
it was really fun stuff. And of course, seeing our good friend Ernie out there as Kino and
Yeah.
all that stuff, and Paige was great as April. It was just
Yeah.
the whole thing was a great experience, and we had a good time.
Oh, two was so much fun. But yeah, I'm with you. Number one, just probably the gritty realism of it. It felt like these actual, like Batman was a gritty Gotham City, and you needed the gritty, But
Well said. Well
what
said.
I
Yeah.
always wondered, by the way, before we move off of that, why did they go Toka and Razor, Snapping Turtle and Wolf, rather than I wanted Bebop and Rocksteady? Did they not want to do Warthog and Rhino, or why?
No, that's a great question because it was one of those things that we discussed and we had again a lot of approvals over all that stuff. But we immediately said, well, let's just do Bebop and Rocksteady. But there was such an excitement at the time because we were now by then we'd had I think we were heading into our one, two, three, four, fourth season of the cartoon show.
Mhm.
So we just had so many wonderful new characters that we were creating to build out the Turtle universe. We said, well, we've already got two awesome bad guys with Bebop and Rocksteady. Let's add a couple more really massive, nasty
Yeah.
mutant bad guys, and so we came up with Toka and Razor.
Num
Hindsight,
nums.
yeah, yeah, num num. They played it a little lighter than we thought, but the
Yeah.
but that aside is it was just exciting to create a couple of new bad guys. But in hindsight, definitely, both Pete and I said we should have done Bebop and Rocksteady.
That was the perfect moment when they showed up on the screen. We loved them and they're iconic. So I guess it works in the end. But
It works.
yeah, that would have been the moment that Bebop and Rocksteady would have entered. But
Yeah,
all right, well, you've been generous with your time. We don't have time to go into all the iterations, so I'll just list a couple of them. You said you liked even the back in time the 1600s Japan Turtles 3, the movie.
very much. Yeah,
Box office had dropped off. It was still profitable, right? But it dropped off a little from the first two.
yeah.
And then what? They rebooted as an animated version with Chris Evans, Sarah Michelle Gellar, all that in TMNT in 2007.
2000,
And then,
2007. Yep. Mhm.
yep. And then there was the Michael Bay produced 2014 reboot with Megan Fox and Will Arnett, and that had its own sequel. And then the most recent, I thought it really regained its footing in the 2023 animated reboot, the Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg version. That was a pretty big hit. Michelangelo was worried the turtles were going to get milked and all that. There was like a running joke.
Yeah, no, to me it was like the reboot that Seth Rogen, director Jeff Rowe and Evan Goldberg, that Point Grey, they did such a fantastic job and they put all of their love and they grew up as fans of the Turtles. But to me, it took it like back to that sweet spot that was something for all audiences, and it
Right.
made it just funny for all ages, which is what I want. So I really love that movie. It was one of my favorite reboots. It kind of reminded me of like when J.J. Abrams did The Force Awakens. The first when he came back and sort of helped reboot the Star Wars franchise. It
Yeah.
was just it felt like going home.
Yeah, it's something, it
Totally.
just clicked. And I believe that same outfit's going to be doing a follow-up, right, in 2026. Fingers
They
crossed.
are. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. In our final seconds, how involved are you in all of these iterations, including the ones coming up? Or is it more you just sit back and let the royalties roll?
Well, it's one of those things that's, I had sold my interest in the Turtles many, many years ago. So a lot
Yeah.
of times, so I don't get royalties on much, but that's okay because I still get to be the OG. I get to be
You're the
the
George Lucas sitting proud, Papa,
exactly.
watching
I
it.
get I get to be a proud co-parent with Peter Laird, and but no, it's fun. And it depends on the series. Like they brought me in on the cartoon series, which I love, the 2012 with Cyril Neely and those guys that did a
Yeah,
wonderful 2012 series.
yeah,
Helped develop some of the Turtles' Next Mutation after that. So it depends on the project. And I guess still get to do like in the Mutant Mayhem they brought me in to do a voice of one of the characters, which I was really honored, of course,
yeah.
to be part of. Continue to be part of the Turtle family is because they're still my kids no matter what. They've grown up. They're still teenagers, perpetual teenagers, but they're still
That's
my
true. They're always teenage, right? They never age. Like
yeah.
Bart Simpson, he never gets older.
Yeah,
Uh,
Spider-Man, everybody. Yeah, so it's
that's
like so.
true.
Yeah, so it's great, and that's probably my best part of like going to shows like Awesome Con and things like that. We do Courtney and I do. We depends. Last year we did more. We did 16 shows because it was the 40th anniversary. But with this year we're doing 10 shows. But it's just great to meet the fans who gave us such a wonderful job and such a great opportunity to be creative and do all the fun stuff. And of course, hang out with some of the friends that we only get to see at shows sometimes, which is like the 35th anniversary Turtles crew. So it's I'm really looking forward to it. And there's a lot of other really great guests at the show, by the way, too. Which I'm not only you know um, uh, Turtles creator, but I'm also a fan of all the genre things, and
Right.
so I'm in my happy place when I go to Comic Cons.
Oh yeah, I believe this particular Awesome Con, April 4th and 6th, you got to get your tickets, folks, at the convention center because there's going to be, I guess, Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, who did all the Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz stuff. You mentioned Lord of the Rings earlier in this interview. I think Orlando Bloom, Liv Tyler, John Rhys Davies, Sean Astin, they're all going to be there. Even some Goonies cast members, you mentioned that. Like, so yeah, it's you got to come out to this convention. It's going to be awesome, folks.
It is. No, and it's funny, is like you mentioned Sean Austin, which I grew up as a huge fan of Lord of the Rings. And not only we have Samwise Gamgee, but he also did the voice of Raphael in the 2012 Turtle series. So we got a wonderful crowd. We've done a number of shows with Sean, who's just an absolute sweetheart of a person, and he loves his fans as much as we all do. So, but yeah, we're super excited to share in the celebration of all these things. And again, it's our happy place for so many of us.
Absolutely. Before we go, I want to invite you and our listeners to go back in the archives of this podcast and find when I talked to Sean Astin. He came for Awesome Con in DC like a couple years back, and we went into Rudy and Goonies and Lord of the Rings. It was, and Raphael, we mentioned. It was great. But come on out to Awesome Con, everybody, April 4th through the 6th. It's going to be a great time. Washington Convention Center in Washington, D.C. Kevin Eastman, co-creator of Ninja Turtles. It's an absolute honor. I bow before you in terms of, if you can't tell the excitement in my voice, I love the freaking Ninja Turtles.
Well, appreciate you very much. Great chatting with you today, and really looking forward to Awesome Con. It's going to be an absolute blast.
Awesome. Thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Cheers, man.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.